So now that we are done with the demonstration of Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides, as well as Google Form, let's now proceed to demonstrating how we can actually create and join a particular Google Classroom. So we check this icon again, and we look for the icon Classroom. And if we click this one, you will be directed to this particular interface. As a teacher, you'll be able to see the following virtual classrooms. And if you want to create a classroom, well, basically we can perform two options with Google Classroom. We could either join a class or we could either create a class. I'm going to be demonstrating this one first, creating a class. You can click this one. You can supply the data of about the class. So we can say okay, and then we can then create a classroom. Right after clicking this link, Google Classroom will prepare a virtual classroom for you where you can access the data, some data about the classroom, especially the code where students can join the classroom. First things first, we can click on this particular section to access main menu. If you want to go back to your classes as a teacher, this is again the teacher view, and we can then go back, return to the sample class we have just created. And it's very important that we set basic settings on this particular classroom. We click this one, this icon, and essential settings that we need to keep in mind are the following. We can um, we can allow students to post and comment, but we ideally don't want students to just post right away on our classroom. So we can set this as, or we can instead use this particular setting. We can select students can only comment, so that students can only comment on the stream of our Google Classroom. Other than that, we can click this one to display the code of our Google Classroom, right? So this is the code that we disseminate to our students. And this is the same code that the students will use when joining the classroom. So we will again demonstrate joining a class using our other email login on this browser. We will copy the code first, and then let's shift into student mode. So let's say, for example, through this email, again, this is the Mozilla Firefox browser. This is Google Chrome browser. This uses a different email, while this one also uses a different email. So the student will have to follow the same step actually when accessing the classroom icon or the classroom app here. And then instead of clicking the create class, the student on the student side will should click the join class. And then student will paste the code or type the code here, right? After that, the student can then click this button. We wait for a minute. And then this is the part where the student is now able to join the classroom. The same process that the student can do when going back to classes. So this is the most recent class that the student has joined. So if we click this one, this is the part when the students are able to see or will be able to see the posts or announcements of the teacher. Now, since we have joined to this particular classroom on the teacher's side, the teacher can also be able to check out the students who have joined the classroom by clicking people, right? And as you will see, we now have one particular student. So Facebook calls it timeline, quote unquote. Google Chrome calls it timeline as a stream. So this is when we can post an announcement. This. Okay, you post it, and then on the student side, the student should be able to see that particular post the teacher has created right here. So as you can see, this is the student mode. So the student cannot post something, but the student can comment something. And if I comment this one, we'll be able to see that a student commented on this particular post. We need to reload it. Okay, we can now see the comment of that particular student. On the teacher's side, you can save a draft if you uh, if you don't want the post to be posted right away. You can create it as a draft instead, so that you can post it later. Instead of clicking post, you can click this one, and then you can actually also schedule it. Right? You can schedule the post. Just select the time and date and click schedule. If you don't want that, you can just save it as a draft. And that will not be posted yet. And on the teacher side, you'll be able to see this particular feedback, this particular informative feedback. This indicates that you have a saved announcement, which we normally and ideally post in a short while. If you click this one again, and you're ready to post it, you click post and post. So your draft will now be posted just like that, right? Google Classroom we can actually put a task or classwork through Google Classroom. However, we have not done that because I collect your task using Google Form. That's another option. That is the option that Chad recommends right from the start of the classes under the pandemic. However, you can also perform these process. You can click create, and let's say you create a quiz assignment, sort of a quiz, and you can put it here. Well, in this particular part, you can refer back to Google Form, because basically what Google Classroom will do is to allow you to create a quiz using Google Form instead. So if you think about it, we can just create the quiz right from the Google Form, and instead of doing this process, we can instead go back to Stream, get the link of that Google Form as your quiz, and then post it here. Right? If you want to post an assignment, you can go back to classwork, and then you create an assignment, right? Okay, and then you put some instructions, and then your points, and then let's say the due date. Okay, and then your rubric, just in case you want to create some rubric, or you want to post some rubric. And then if we are okay with it, we can click assign. Okay, and then as you can see on the teacher's interface, you can see that we have just created this particular task for the students. Now on the student section, we need to refresh this just to make sure. Okay, and as you can see on the left corner, the student should be able to see this particular task, right? So the student will be given kind of an area, kind of an overview, where the student can see the tasks that are to be settled, that are to be submitted. Right? If you click view all, the student will be able to see these information on the student side, right? And then if we go back to classes, go back to this one. If you click this tab instead of clicking this one, you can perform this one, and you can check out on this particular assignment that the teacher has posted. Okay, so if we click this one, if the student will click that one, the student will be able to see an overview of the assignment. And then if the student will click this one, the student should be able to see this interface. Okay, and let's say, for example, this is a research work. The student should be able to submit a task here, right? So the student will then click this one, right? If the student has prepared a Google Doc, then the student can just attach a Google Doc here. It could also be Google Slide, sheets, or drawings. Or the student can actually integrate a link in cases when the students saved the file or the task somewhere else, or if the student saved the task right in his or her Google Drive, we can also click this one, and the student should be able to locate the file saved in his or her Google Drive. But ideally, most of the time, the student should be able to attach the file, the task of the file of the task, through this particular setting or through this particular option, to make sure that we get, as teachers, we get the physical, we get the file instead of the reference of that file, right? So that we'll be able to get a copy of that file. So the student should be able to attach right here the particular file, let's say this one, and let's say we attach this image as our answer. We wait for a minute. Then it's very important that the student should be able to click turn in. This is the equivalent of submit. So as soon as the student will click turn in, right, we turn in. This means that the student has already submitted his or her task. You go back to the classes, okay? And since we have already settled that task, as you can see, there is nothing on the list for the tasks this time, because we have already settled the task a while back. Going back to the teacher's interface, if we click this task, we'll be able to see that someone has already turned in, right? So if you have, let's say, 20 students, 10 have turned in, you will be able to see 10 on this corner and 10 on this corner. That means that 10 students have turned in or submitted their task, and another 10 students have not submitted their tasks yet. So if you view this particular information, you'll be able to see that this particular student is Mr. Mark Lasser Katungal, and that student has turned in his task, and you can view the task here. Okay, right. Okay, so this is how Google Classroom works in terms of its classworks. But as in reference to our experience, we don't usually do that. What we do is we just post the questions right on the stream, and right away we post the link to either the submission link, or we post the link to the Google Form quiz. Google Form quiz, where the student can take their quizzes or their examinations. And this is basically how we set up our Google Classroom. And in addition, I've shown you how students would normally join a class through Google Classroom using the code that we provide to them, which you have, of course, done at the beginning of this summer class.